came out. Yay, I'm recorded. About 12 days ago. So it's new and super exciting. For most of you, you can think of it as being a technical correction to R4 and can safely treat it as such. There are some breaking changes in it, but the breaking changes that are in it are all around the medication definition resources, and nobody apparently implemented those as they were in R4, so in theory that it shouldn't be breaking anybody. But we did fix a number of issues with our. There were some invariants that were broken and doing bad things. There were schematron that was broken and doing bad things, and there were a few infrastructural stuff that we fixed. So if you are a developer who deeply cares about the underlying structure, yay technology. We have an echo in the room. I like listening to myself. Not really. Oh. If you from the deep technical, then R4B might not be a simple technical correction for you, but for systems it can be. New things in our, we have subscription topic and subscription status, and that would be of interest to many folks because subscription as it was defined in R4 was really great in theory and really bad in practice. So we've adopted a couple of things from the planned version of R5 into R4 to allow people to start taking advantage of that sooner without having to migrate, because there's a bunch of folks that don't want to do that anytime soon. There's also a bunch of new resources around evidence-based medicine, really esoteric area for most folks. I don't expect we're going to see a whole lot of EHR support or EBM stuff in most places, but for the people who care, it's really cool and exciting, and it will eventually drive awesomeness, and so we're excited to have that. So people, if you want to take advantage of all of those technical corrections, moving to R4B is a thing, and it should be transparent to you. The one piece that is not transparent is, of course, content negotiation. You will end up with a different version declaration. So if somebody asks for 4.0 or 4.3, you can probably serve exactly the same content, but you will need to recognize that 4.3 is something that people can ask for now, and is something that I need to be able to serve up. So let's talk about R5. We did time for R5. I'm relatively optimistic that this isn't going to change yet again. There's not going to be any more worldwide pandemics or anything else like that again, ever. Or certainly not before we get to the beginning of next year, because we just can't handle that. So we need to participate in the September ballot cycle, but we're going to be late in the September cycle, which means that all of the implementation guides and everything else for September will go first. And then R5 will open once all of those ballots close, because we don't want people's attention being split between paying attention to R5 and paying attention to all the implementation guides, because the reality is that the specifications would lose out. The downside is we will not have our ballot results before the next working group meeting. The will be during the working group meeting. So night should be your plan for September. We are not going to take anything new normative in R5. We had originally hoped to take a bunch of things normative in R5, but in talking to the community in terms of how ready they were and also how desperate they were for normative content, turns out that they weren't super desperate for normative content. and they weren't necessarily ready to make content normative. So we will go into R5 with the same content that was normative as in R4. We will not be having any new normative. We'll be making changes, or at least some changes to existing normative resources like patient and observation, etc. Those changes, however, will be STU only, which means that we could theoretically change them in R6, that would be a legal thing for us to do, although of course we would be pretty careful about that. You can take a look at what is proposed for R5 in the continuous integration build. It is not completely up to date yet. There's still a bunch of outstanding changes that need to be made. Most of them structures, although some of the other groups are behind as well. But we are all strong to get as many of those as possible in before mid-August, which is when we are starting into the QA process for R5. In terms of major changes in release 5, there are some new resources. So we have a condition definition resource. We have device dispense, imaging selection, nutrition product. You can read. Key takeaway when you look at those is, yeah, all of them might be interesting. I might consider implementing those eventually, but there's not anything in that list that you go, oh, thank God I haven't been able to do healthcare without those things. More fringe in terms of stuff. The one that I probably expect to see most implemented in systems is transport. There's a bunch of use cases for that, and we'll probably see that adopted relatively widely, possibly wildly, and obviously in your specific area. If you're in nutrition, the nutrition product matters. If you're in imaging selection matters. But major changes. Obviously, evidence-based medicine, there's a bunch of new stuff for that. A bunch of stuff in the medication definition space as well. All those carry things that have been into R4B. So we'll stay kicking around in it actually publishes or not. I can't say for sure. A couple of changes to name. So statement resources, device use statement, medication statement have been renamed to usage to hopefully give people a better idea of what they're for. Although I know that there are some people who are up in arms about that. It's a breaking change, and we'll see how that progresses through ballot. Media is going away, has gone away. It's being subsumed into document reference, and vision prescription is supposed to go subsumed into device request. There are, of course, changes in every resource. Changing names of things or refactoring element, changing a lot of data types. We have a new couple reference data type, and that's popping up in a bunch of places. And fixing documentation, fixing invariance, maturity. All of those are things that are happening as part of this, and I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't know, and some of them will change between now and August anyhow. We will publish all of them in the ballot, and as part of the ballot, we will have a view that lets you see what has changed from R4. Sometimes that view will be really ugly because it's an automatically generated view, and if we've completely reorganized all of the elements and documentation, then it's hard to see what's changed, but that's the best we are able to do. We will produce transforms from R4 to R5. Those will not be out in time for ballot because it's a huge amount of work, and we only want to do it once things have stabilized after we've done ballot reconciliation. If you are interested in seeing what's coming, take a look at the continuous integration build, and also take a look at Jura to see what changes have already been agreed to. It'll be at least 2 years we put R5 out, that we would be looking at R6. So possibly in September of 2024. The exact time frame for that will depend a little bit on the community. A few possibilities. One is that everybody goes gangbusters and adopts R5 like crazy, in which case R6 will probably take a while because nobody will have energy or enthusiasm for it. Possibility B is people look at R, and ignore it. But they will be super excited about things becoming normative in R6 and will possibly be a big push to get that sooner. And so we don't know for sure. So be mid 2025. Could be a little bit later than that. We don't want to go nearly as long as we did between R4 and R5 in terms of waiting for R6. So it's not going to be like 4-ish years, but it could certainly be 3. In terms of releases beyond that, we are certainly hoping to get releases every couple of years, and as more and more content becomes locked down as normative, it becomes more realistic to even get releases out more frequently than that, because the releases will be more about improving the documentation clarity than making breaking changes, and therefore new releases are not nearly as painful for everyone as they are right now. But like I said, you know exactly how accurate my predictions were about the next release after R4, right after R4 came out. So we will see what reality intrudes on us over the next couple of years. Most of you hopefully know how to find me. Best place to reach me is on chat.fhir.org. Ask your questions in PM, or better yet, ask them in public, because then everybody gets the answer, and you rely on only me, because I don't necessarily always know the answers. So that's what I had to share. Questions? Heckling.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Is this mic working?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, nice. First of all, we have some choppy online for that. So are there any questions for Lloyd? There we go.
Lloyd. I noticed on your R5 slide a couple of asterisks next to the no breaking changes to normative content. What do those represent?
A desire coming out of patient administration to make some breaking changes to the patient. They've been told no. Doesn't mean that they will still express the desire. It is possible for to make breaking changes to normative content if we as a universal consensus from the community that, yeah, we want to make that change, and the fact that it's breaking doesn't matter. And so they have the right to try that approach and sort of get the community to say, yeah, it's going to be better for everyone, and yeah, it's breaking, but we want to do it anyhow. It's a rather high bar for a work group to meet in order to achieve that. So, and that's the consideration in terms of breaking change is we have notifications, text in terms of we weren't explicit about this, but everybody knows. But the reality is that always everybody knows, or what is community isn't obvious to some. So we can't guarantee those clarifications won't be perceived as breaking by some in the community. So those are sort of the two different caveats with those asterisks. Thanks for calling that out, because I had meant to talk about it, but I don't have my speaker view because of the way that we're showing. I forgot.
The online attendees. Any chance of an R5B?
And never say no. With was going to be a super easy, quick release. didn't really work out that way. I mean, the good news is that part of it was we had to do a whole bunch of tooling infrastructure changes to make it even possible. Those tooling infrastructure changes are now made, so that look at the bar. We're still some challenges in terms of getting that turned around on a relatively timely fashion. And we would look carefully about what there was value, and it really depends on what is our expectation around timelines for R6. B was also a slightly special release in that it was intended to be, and I think we have more or less maintained it as a technical correction release for the vast majority of the community, with no breaking changes to existing implemented content. And we'd have to see whether there was actually a business case for that same sort of thing in a post R5 environment. If there's a use case for it, FMG will absolutely look at doing that. But we sort of have to look at, do we really think that we can get an interim release out faster or significantly faster than we will get the official release out? And that would drive the decision.
Thank you. There are no questions. I have another one from the online community. Would breaking changes between versions incur large-scale integration challenges in general?
Yes. It depends on folks have implemented the part that gets broken. If we make a breaking change to patient, a couple of systems might notice that. If we make a breaking change to family member history, not so much. And I mean, we have a set of guidelines that we follow around breaking change. So we look at resource maturity. If the maturity is level 4 or higher, then if we're going to make a breaking change, we do have to reach out to the entire community, although sometimes that reach out is through the ballot process, where we highlight and say, hey, this is happening. Are people on board with this? So we don't try to make breaking changes for fun. But absolutely, breaking changes do implement or do impact implementations. And we are expecting there to need to be transforms. If you are currently exporting and exposing content as R4 and you want to adopt R5, it's not going to be simply continue to expose everything that you currently have. In some cases, you might be lucky, and all of the stuff that you're currently exposing is not impacted by any breaking change. And if that happens, congratulations. Don't necessarily count on it happening from R5 to R6. It's one of the challenges of being a center for trial use is when we get it wrong, we fix it. And we have the ability to fix it because we have said we're not locking it down yet. And we work towards locking it down based on degree of implementation.
We are about time now, so let's give an applause to Lloyd for